This content is brought to you in part by Real Marketing, the only marketing firm recommended exclusively by the Institute. Real Marketing utilizes over 25 years of expertise, and their products are built and customized for you to dominate any neighborhood, anywhere. Go to realmarketingforyou.com. That's realmarketing, the number 4, you.com. Also, look for past A State of Mind episodes with CEO David Collins as our guest. Okay, so welcome, Lori and Nissan. This is going to be fun. I'm really excited about today. We've got two really supreme experts here to talk about this idea of professionally showcasing a home. So let's talk first to Lori Pedersen. Lori has her own company, Lori Pedersen Staging and Home Staging and Styling. Lori, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this profession and how it kind of reaches into a bunch of different other things.
Thanks, Diane. In a previous life, I was in financial accounting and operations for an industrial distribution company. So I was not in this world at all. But luckily, I was able to have a new career start about 10 years ago now, in 2012. And I always wanted to get into interior design, but I really wasn't keen on going back to school for 4 years and getting the whole designation going back to that. So somebody just mentioned off the cuff, why don't you look at real estate staging? So I did, and I found this governing body or this professional training organization called CSP International, Certified Staging Professionals. And I thought, this is great. This is a nice way in, and this will be fun. So I took the course, and sort of the rest is history. I spent quite a bit of time mentoring before that with an interior designer. So I learned a little bit about that side of the business, and then through the CSP, how to apply it to real estate transactions.
Yeah, and so now you've grown this business you have a full team, right? You now hold the highest designation you can around luxury, right? It's a luxury specialist.
Yes.
Within staging. That's really terrific. And both you and Nissan work together. And so Nissan, tell us a little bit. You have kind of the same, almost an interesting story that's quite similar.
Yes, and hi everyone. Many years ago, I joined my dad's law firm. His practice was restricted to personal injury litigation, insurance law. I'm a mediator. That's my background. I'm a member of the Law Society, and my role was meeting with clients who have been in motor vehicle accidents and then representing them at these mediation hearings, settlement negotiations. I was miserable. I spent, I'd say, half my day in hospitals looking at, clients hooked up to machinery and complaints. It was just a very depressing, stressful job. I spent another, several hours a day fighting with insurers, and then trying to facilitate loans for the poor clients who, have no more means of supporting their families. They're losing their houses. It's very miserable. And it takes, in litigation, it could take 2-3 years minimum to settle one of these claims. You have to wait for your clients to reach their maximum medical recovery. That may take 2 years. You issue your claim, you go to discoveries, depositions.
Wow.
It was extremely lucrative.
Yeah.
But I was miserable. At the time, I was living in a Tony chic neighborhood in Toronto called Yorkville. And I'm surrounded by all these millionaires. And I'm watching as, every couple of years, they're selling their condos and they're upgrading. They're never happy with what they have. They're always looking for the next best property. And I say to myself, what am I doing here? I have all the contacts. They say contacts equals contracts. So why don't I just start helping my neighbors upgrade And so I decided to jump into real estate. And there's very little stress in comparison to what I
Right.
used to
You have
do.
what I call perspective,
Mhm.
right? Like
Oh,
you have
yes.
tremendous perspective of
Okay.
what stress really is, right? And so now
Yes.
you kind of unlocked a passion of yours. And now many years later, here you are, a very successful real estate professional in Yorkville, right? And they call you Mr. Yorkville, right? Can you tell us that story? Because it's one of my
Just
favorites.
how we got to Mr. Yorkville.
Yes.
Well, it could be because everything, every task, everything I do is, in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from restaurants to going to the gym to performing at the synagogue, everything I do is York. They did not allow for any billboard advertisements. And I think to this very day, they don't. You'll never drive down the road and see a billboard with an agent smiling saying, this is my neighborhood, or, you know, I fight for you with their picture. I wanted a billboard in Yorkville. And to get around it, someone I was talking to in branding said, why don't you just change your name? You're not saying the word real estate. You're just Mr. Yorkville. And it stuck.
That's excellent. And I love the
Yeah.
creative thinking around it, because one of the things that has occurred in the last 30 days, right, in the US, is that the real estate market here got a big wake up call how local it is, how local and really hyper local real estate is, with these iBuyers overextending and trying to use algorithms to price properties. And I thought about you and Mr. Yorkville when I was reading that, because it's really absolute proof that, especially I think in the luxury market, it's really about the expertise that you bring about the very area that you're working in. And so the two of you came together in a really interesting property. And Lori, I know you and I have talked about it, and I think this is a really unique way to describe this idea of a partnership between a very successful real estate professional and a very successful a luxury home showcaser. And this was a kind of a unique property.
Yes.
You want to talk about it a little?
Sure. Thank you. This was a scenario definitely where it was a special home, a unique home, and it needed to be presented properly and really marketed with the right touch and with the right level of professionalism. Unfortunately, it wasn't getting that with the previous representation. So I've only known Nissan for about a year, and strictly because of this property, I asked around. I said, can you give me a recommendation for somebody who's really excellent, who would really be willing to partner with me and to really work together to get this property sold? It's a tough one. So Nissan was recommended to me, and we had a meeting, and we chit chatted, and we had a few conversations, and I knew right away, like, this is perfect. This is going to be great.
Excellent.
So, and he won over the family as well. And turns out that 20 years ago, he had dinner with their parents at an event.
Wow.
They were seated
And so
at the
this
same table.
home
So it's a
was,
small circle.
it was already presented. It already had
They've been
an
on the
agent.
market.
It had been on the market for a long time.
Unsuccessfully for almost 3 years.
Yeah. Okay. And so that, I think the general public really does have that impression of these kind of more difficult, higher priced homes. And just
Right.
full disclosure, it's sitting at, I would kind of call them the midpoint. It's not the benchmark, but it's the midpoint. It's pretty high up there in Toronto real estate, but it wasn't in a perfect area, right? And we all know we're working in an environment today that really, regardless of where you are, the right home in the right neighborhood, that's going to go quickly. But not every home can be in the right neighborhood,
No.
and not every home can be exactly on the right street. So this house had some negatives associated with it, right?
Mhm. And as hot
Gorgeous.
as a market ever is, if a home isn't seen to be in good repair or have been taken care of, or presented in a neutralized way that will appeal to a wider base, it will sit. So yeah, so we set about to make those changes. We did neutralize it, we painted it, we brightened it up, we took out quite a bit of furniture and brought in some more transitional pieces, just to soften the styling a little bit. And another trick, not trick, I'm sorry, another thing that we did as a strategy was the kitchen was very specific to a certain demographic. It had 2 ovens, 2 sinks, 2 refrigerators, 2 big, huge islands, and really nowhere to sit down and have a family meal or anything like that. So it was a very specific type of a kitchen. So what we did was we had a 3D rendering made and put on a great big easel on the one side of the kitchen, so that when people came in, even though we couldn't renovate the entire kitchen in time for the listing and things like that, or we didn't want to necessarily spend that money because the new buyers might have their own ideas.
Right, nor would you. You really wouldn't in that case.
Right. So we made a great big poster board of some 3D renderings so people could imagine what the kitchen could look like with a little bit of work.
And so were the two of you, working together on this? Like, how did that relationship work between the two of you?
Yeah,
I had nothing. Oh, sorry.
Right, go ahead.
There you go. Go ahead.
Did I jump in? I had nothing to do with the design. I had no input on what Lori was doing from an aesthetic perspective. Pardon me?
You have some
really
blind trust and faith.
But when I walked into that home for the first time, I was mortified. I mean, Lori is really humble the way she's, explaining this transition. But if I could say this on camera, there was a deuce in the pool and it looked like an elephant lived in the basement. It was just in disarray. The home had curtains, plexiglass, family photos. There were rabbi photos everywhere. It was an Orthodox, Jewish Orthodox
so interesting.
area.
And it went to market that way.
It went to market, and the previous agent did not spend $1 on photography, on cleaning it up, on presenting it. Just a few tricks of the trade.
Sure.
To try and present it properly. But Lori's job was something that I think should take the average stager company 2 years. And she did. How long did it take you, Lori? It took you 6 weeks, 4 weeks?
Few weeks, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And so
unbelievable. The transformation was unbelievable.
So I like this for a ton of reasons, right? Because if I had a nickel for every time I've heard, I introduce myself, hi, I'm Diane. Oh, hi, I'm an agent. There's no inventory, right? Like it's now becoming part of what someone's name is. Hi, I'm Jill. There's no inventory. And so what we're really talking about here is, of course, there's inventory. Okay. Our data bears out that there are homes on the market. But this piece that we're talking about very specifically today is from the stager's perspective, the how do you do it? And then from the really the listing agent's perspective, how do you work with the seller to get them to understand that this market, in this even incredibly hot market, this home in this condition will not sell. And so this particular example it was a total transformation. Lori, what was the budget? Do you recall?
I believe it was in the area for all the repairs and the things that I would say this family spent about $50,000.
Okay, I would have guessed 100. Okay. But so that was just my guess, which means I'm wrong, and I'm wrong almost all the time. But so now they've spent $50,000, and the holding costs of a property like that alone, that's 6 months of holding cost, right? And they held it for 3.5 years or 3 years. So the math in that case really is favorable. And And so that $50,000 is repair work and things like that. And so Nissan, what role did you have in trying to help the seller visualize this type of outcome?
I didn't really have much of a role in this particular case. Lori really sold them on her expertise. Uh, I agreed with everything that Lori stated that needed to be done. So, I just went over the report and I said to my clients, I said, yeah, I mean, this is necessary. Everything here on this report is necessary. Lori's not selling you something you don't need. You need this.
Right.
But that particular client came to me through Lori. So they were already, I didn't have
They're
much
already on board.
input.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
generally speaking,
Yeah.
I always tell my clients, I get Lori in right away. Even at the consultation stage, even if I don't have a listing signed up 100%, I bring Lori, and Lori renders this report, and her report goes through the entire home and says, okay, you have to declutter these bedrooms. We recommend, cleaning the windows, painting these walls, taking this, to storage, whatever it is. It's a 15-page report, and it's it's the best money I could ever spend as a realtor. Even the dollars I spend on Lori is even better than than the money I put into advertising,
Sure.
because it sets the stage. It tells the client exactly what they need to do, and it's their checklist. And they look at this report and they're like, okay, and they start working. Whether the listing is to come on market in a week or two or 6 months out, they're following that report and the guidelines of the report, and it
That's
makes
excellent.
it just easier on everyone. And
Well,
that's before Lori brings her goods
Yeah.
in.
Yeah,
That's just the report.
So kind of from an expectation standpoint, right? There's anytime someone presents you their work product in writing, you automatically think of them differently, right? And so I think that's one thing which would be a standard, right, Laura? I mean, you want people to produce something in writing.
Absolutely. There's quite a few stagers who do what they call walk and talks. They'll do just a speaking consultation. And everybody has their own business model and their own way of doing things, and that works in many cases. But for the luxury market, I really believe that presentation, what we're selling is presentation.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we present, properly to our clients or to our prospective clients? So our report is always, printed. It's always in a glossy folder. It's got backup resources and information, and it's handed to them in a very professional way. We sit down and do a face-to-face presentation now that we can.
Yeah.
It's nice to be back to seeing people again. So yeah, I feel that in order to gain people's trust, and for them to trust us with their most expensive asset likely in their portfolio, that they have to see that we know what we're talking about when it comes to presentation, even in terms of how we present ourselves.
You continue to use the word present and presentation, and I really like that. And I think there's confusion, I believe, in what you do and how you would work with Nissan or any other agent. And I like this platform to kind of clear that up a bit. The thing that I think about is we, and I'm putting myself in the general public, right? We think of maybe staging as kind of design. But, you and I have known each other for a couple of years now, and you've been associated with the Institute now for a couple of years. What you've brought to our members is this idea that there are design elements, right?
Right.
But this is a presentation to sell.
Yes.
And, last year, I guess well, within this year, you've sold your own home.
Yes.
And I love this story for a ton of reasons, but it really drives home the point that it's not just about good taste, because anybody that's watching this on YouTube and anywhere can see that you have beautiful taste, right? But that's not what staging's about.
Right. So what we always say to our clients is that the way we live is very different than the way we sell. When you're selling your home, it becomes a product that needs to be marketed to the population of buyers. When you live in a home, it is for you. It's for your family. It's how you want to use it. It's what makes you comfortable. It's the function of each space that you need to use it as. Do you need a workspace here? Do you need a workout space somewhere else? But when you're selling, it all of a sudden has to become a product. So I recently sold my house, and everyone would think automatically that, oh, you're a stager, you're a designer. You don't need to touch your house. You can just put the sign on the lawn and off you go. Well, no. I basically told my husband, I said, stand back. I need to walk the talk and let me do what we need to do. So I called in my two lead stagers, and we sat at the kitchen table, and I sat down with my hands folded and my mouth shut, and they provided me with a full staging consultation. They did the room by room report. It was 4 pages long. We had to pre-pack. I used pre-pack, not declutter. We had to pre-pack as much as we could. We had to clear things out. We had to paint a few rooms. We had to, I used my front living room as the family room because it was more comfortable to be that way. That's the way I wanted to use that room. But for selling, it was a first impression room. So I wanted to bring it back to being a living room. So out goes that furniture, out to storage, in comes staging furniture. So in 10 days, we literally had a whirlwind in this house. We had painters, cleaners, chandelier cleaners, stagers, movers, packers, the whole 9 yards. It was to an outsider, it would be a 3-ring circus. To us, it was a well-oiled machine, right? And so we transformed the entire place, got it on the market. And in the first morning, we had 3 preemptive offers, but we held off until the end of the weekend, and we ended up with 7 offers and 23% over asking.
Wow, that's amazing. And of course, there's a lot in there that we all heard. So I'm going to ask you a couple of follow-up questions, and then I'm going to ask Nissan a question. So this idea that you painted rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a pretty big commitment for people to do, right, that aren't in this business. So if I'm, again, the seller, I think, why do you want to paint this room? I really like this deep orange. Okay, whatever, right? You probably had a bold color. And why is it that needs to go away?
Because anything that is very taste specific limits your market. That's what it boils down to. So if you want it to appeal to a wider base, you want it to appeal to more people, you make it more neutral and more general in a way.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you don't live like that, right? You like color, you like what you like.
Because I've been doing staging for 10 years and everything is painted, all of our clients, we recommend they go grayish almost everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So I had a deep wine Merlot kind of a wall, and I had, I had a teal wall in another room. Like I liked my house to be a little bit more colorful when I come home, because I'm so used to seeing so much neutral. But when we had to go to market, we had to tone it down a little bit.
One of the things we talked about, right, over time, you and I've talked, and Nissan and I've talked about this, that we're in this, again, crazy market, and there's more to it as well. It's right, the higher the price point goes, frankly, the more money people have to personalize.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you get into even the home that you talked about that have plexiglass and multiple, functioning kitchens, that's just a personalization for their lifestyle, right? And so the key is to remove that particular lifestyle and put in a more general lifestyle. Because we all know that in the luxury market, people are buying They're buying the dirt, but they're buying the lifestyle, right?
Mhm.
And you want to showcase that. Nissan, one of the things you talked about was this idea of how a stager, a professional luxury stager, can maximize every inch. So in the world where you're in right
Mhm.
now, a
Mhm.
room that might be forgotten, like a basement,
Mhm.
right? So
I would like to just pick up on something that Lori mentioned with the colors,
yeah,
having colored walls. I find that when you have color on the wall, the room appears smaller. I loved my office. It was done in Faro Ball Rectory red. But when I went to sell that condo, I went white because I
right,
mean, it's, you could put artwork up on a white wall, but these personalized, colorful rooms, they appear much smaller, like 30%,
Very true.
smaller.
Mhm.
Uh, I wanted to make a distinction between a professional stager.
right,
There's a difference between a professional stager and then stagers. Stagers are all over the place. Your average stager thinks they know something about interior design because
mhm,
their grandmother said that
sure,
they have good taste, and they go to the home. They don't render a report. They don't give any professional advice. They simply say, "This is my fee." And they dial 1-800 rent crap, and they bring in this stuff, this hideous. I don't want to put down IKEA, but it's not even IKEA. It's like
yeah,
used IKEA.
yeah,
And they think that's wonderful. They just think that, and I've had two occasions where I've just sent it all back. I
sure,
just said like what is this? And then I scramble and bring in my own artwork.
right,
I disassemble my own condo, bring the bring my furniture to a
right.
listing, and hopefully it sells quickly enough so I could get my furniture back. Uh, and, and that is not professional. That is not the way it should be done. What Lori does is she brings quality furniture from LT, furniture that affluent, successful people would actually use. I mean, who's your audience? If who's coming in to buy that property? If they're used to sitting on Roche Bobois, then
You've
you
got to
have
bring
to
in,
use Lori. You can't rent
right, right. No, that makes a lot
the
of sense.
craft.
And so how about this idea though of um it used to be just sort of the primary rooms or getting you from the curb into the house. And then as you go through the house, the impression initially is really what matters. But in this type of market where we're trying to get the maximum value and every square footage piece of square footage matters, what are you seeing?
Yeah, you're asking me.
Yeah.
You're still talking. Okay, okay. Uh, I'm seeing that agents are making sure that every square inch is addressed, whether it's a theater room, home office, uh, you know, uh, a playground. They're even paying attention to the outside. They're setting up a basketball court. A very professional looking basketball court in the back of the home, because in this market you're overpaying. Let's face it, in many instances
Sure.
you're coming in with a few $100,000 over ask. You want to feel like you're getting your money's worth.
Mhm. So the more line items you could add to that feature list on the listing, the more people will attribute to the value, right? So we're adding
Yes.
yoga studios, wellness centers, home gyms, all sorts of wine
I
cellars.
Yeah, I find very often they're replacing the basement flooring, putting in new hardwood. And
Mhm,
that is a recommendation from professional stagers, such
mhm,
as Lori. They're coming in, they're not just simply putting, lipstick on a pig. They're actually going in and saying, okay, a family has to live here. Children have to play in the basement. We don't want mold. We don't want this old floor. They'll rip out the flooring, spend $20,000, and then stage the basement to the to the nines. But they're getting their value when they're selling that home. You may have 9 registered offers.
Lori, I love
on
that. I
something
love
on
what
that
you
product.
just talked about. And that is a real strategy, right? Adding features that may have just been a room used for something else, but in a luxury lifestyle, saying that it's a yoga room is going to be, check. Wow, I've got that. They may not use it for that, right?
It'll likely be a storage room, but
it'll likely be a storage room. That's funny. So kind of wrapping this up, right? One of the things that we think about here at the Institute is the market that we're in right now, regardless of where you are. Okay, we've established that you're our northernmost friend in Toronto there.
snowy
And,
friends.
yes, and in the US and really wherever you really are right now, there's this enormous inventory, quote, I'm doing air quotes, shortage. Because this is where the professions that you both have step up, okay? And say, look, if a sales ratio is, 150% or 200%, meaning the turnover on X street or X neighborhood is such that those houses are going to sell no matter what. We also recognize that we have this burgeoning population that wants to be homeowners. How do we help them do that? Not by telling them, hi, my name is Jill and there's no inventory. It's, hi, my name is Jill and I want to introduce you to this other part of town. Okay. And a professional stager and a real estate professional have really spent the time creating a very different feel and look. And now we're kind of removing these borders of, oh, I don't want to live past that street, right? Which are really psychological barriers. And the house that you talked about, not your own home, but the house that you talked about that was, priced fairly high, it's kind of that kind of home, right? It wasn't in the most ideal neighborhood.
No, it wasn't. But that's what we're seeing generally is that even if people can't necessarily afford the core of the city, they also don't really need to right now. They can get a lot more bang for their buck if they stretch out even just 10 minutes or 20 minutes from the downtown core to the greater Toronto area. Almost goes in $500,000 increments.
Wow, that's amazing.
You can get the same house, 10 or 15 minutes further away for $500,000 less. So that's a significant dollar value. That's real money for a young family or first-time homeowners. And especially with the work from home reality that we're living in right now, people don't need to be on the subway line. They don't need to be right downtown anymore.
Right.
They can go that extra 10 or 15 or 20 minutes or even half an hour, save quite a bit of money and still have a comfortable lifestyle and a really lovely home to raise their family in or to, be pre-retired. A lot of people are going now to lakeside areas. They're trying to live a little bit more with an outdoor lifestyle. So they don't necessarily need to be commuting to the rat race.
Right.
Because now they're just on Zoom all day. So they can live where they want to live instead of where they
Now,
have.
hopefully one of these days, this pandemic ends, and then we could start selling all those country properties and bring them back into the downtown core.
It's just
kind of like divorce. It's the gift that keeps giving for realtors, right? And
Well,
we,
Yeah, we called that, we just issued a report. We issued a report and we termed that the boomerang, right?
Mhm.
That that there's this idea that it started in the urban core and then people said, hey, I want to go out here. And maybe they didn't even sell their urban core home, right? But they did in the luxury market add another property. But the other kind of interesting thing about luxury today and this luxury benchmarks that we have, it kind of used to go without saying that luxury was the buy up market. But in this economy that we're all in, where we have favorable interest rates, luxury is also becoming the entry. And so you really, when it's the entry, you've really got to also present the home because they're not necessarily savvy, right? They're not, this is their first home and and maybe it's not a $5 million home, but maybe it's $1.5 million. And they don't understand that those red walls can be painted over. Now, I do have to say this. How many coats of white paint did it take for you to cover the Fairway wall? How many? 4?
A lot. It was pink for a while.
It was pink.
It was
Sorry.
pink. And
I had to
it takes a lot.
That's what people are looking for, right? They're looking for a nice, modern, clean aesthetic. Believe it or not, crown moldings are no longer in favor. People just want walls to look nice and tall and high ceilings. So crown moldings are coming, especially the ornate crown moldings are coming down. So we always sort of have to stay a little bit ahead of the trend. If it's a trend, then we're too late. So we have to stay ahead of it and then be able to predict what people are going to want, or what people are looking for. And one thing that is also super important is that usually the buyers of a property are at least 15 to 20 years younger than the sellers of a property. So those people are generally a little bit more trendy, a little bit more stylish, a little bit more aware of fashion and what's going on. So just to have a place that looks very well put together and a little edgy or a little fun, a little funky, makes it memorable and people will come back to it.
That's a great point. And, one that I've had my eye on that for a while, of the idea of the seller probably couldn't even buy in that neighborhood anymore. Right. And so that whole approach has to be, how do you satisfy both sides? Right. Mm-hmm. And I love your stories. I think you both are really terrific professionals. And, I have to give you the commercial, Lori, because you're just such a lovely human being. It's Lori Pedersen, PEDRSEN.ca, because you're Canadian. And so that's your website. And I do love it. And I know you're making some changes to it. And so when folks see it, it's going to be brand spanking new. And then you also have your work on House.
Yes.
And of course you are all over Instagram, I imagine.
Yes.
And look, Lori's just somebody that I highly encourage people to follow, because she said something really important there, is that when it's a trend, we're too late. And so folks like Lori spend their time being ahead of that. And I think, it's really clear the chemistry between the two of you, how well you work together, because even though he won't admit it, he's also pretty ahead of the trend too, Mr. Yorkville. So look, thanks again. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Diane, it was fun.